Welcome to the Belly Button Window channel and episode 28 part 2 of the Jimi Hendrix story, like you've never heard it before. In this episode, we complete the deep dive into November 1968, featuring the remaining concerts, the various club jams, interviews, photo shoots and press commitments, as well as interesting day-to-day details. Stick around, and at the end of the video, we will post some more bonus pictures, stunning images which we have carried over from previous episodes. Don't forget to like our videos, subscribe for channel updates and send us your feedback and comments. Plus, do yourself a favor and check out the extensive catalogue of Hendrix books, classic Hendrix recordings on vinyl and t-shirts, available for purchase via the Belly Button Window store. Sunday the 10th of November, and the Jimi Hendrix Experience is scheduled to appear on the famous Ed Sullivan Show. The band had been booked by Sullivan's son-in-law, Bob Precht, producer of the program. Sullivan is best known for his variety show, which was very successful during the 1950s and 1960s, appearing on the CBS network. The program was broadcast from New York and was to feature a performance by the Experience along with Country Joe and the Fish. However, owing to a musician's strike, the show had to be cancelled. Hendrix author John McDermott quotes Bob LEVINE, Hendrix's US manager from 1967 to 1970, as follows: "The producers of the Sullivan Show really wanted to have Jimi. Ed Sullivan had to have it somehow, so Sullivan, Precht, Mike Jeffrey and I got together to talk about it. Sullivan wanted the Vienna Ballet dancing to his music, with Hendrix in front of a large orchestra, with the setting taking place in Europe. Jeffrey thought about the budget he would need, and agreed to the concept, but verbally. He left the meeting to go talk with someone. I don't remember who, and when, a day or two later, I told him that he was supposed to work with Bob Precht on the project, he replied, 'Well, I'm not going to do it.' I asked him if he had talked to Jimi about it, and he said, 'I'm not going to let Hendrix do that. I have my reasons.' Well, Jimi wished he had." Monday, the 11th of November. According to the official Hendrix website, Jimi Hendrix participated in a jam session with members of Fleetwood Mac at Steve Paul's Scene Club, Greenwich Village, New York. Tuesday, the 12th of November. The large British book and record chain W.H. Smith's refused to display the cover of the album Electric Ladyland because of the controversy surrounding the naked girls on the cover. Going forward, the album will be made available with revised artwork due to complaints. While around this period, the Experience is featured in the following newspapers and underground publications: Sunday News, November 10th edition, and The Fifth Estate, number 66, November 1968 edition. Friday the 15th of November, and the Experience flies to Cincinnati, Ohio, where Jimi is pictured arriving at the airport in a taxi with Carmen Barrero on their way to the Netherland Hilton Hotel. Later that evening, the Experience performs at the Cincinnati Gardens. Partial set list for the evening: Are You Experienced?, Manic Depression, I Don't Live Today, Purple Haze, The Star-Spangled Banner, America the Beautiful, and Wild Thing. Hendrix at the Gardens, A Personal Recollection, by Richard Randy Chase. My number one garden memory. I remember Cincinnati Gardens as the site of the first big rock concert I ever attended on November 15th, 1968. At the time, our small group of friends left Lucasville, Ohio, relishing the road trip to Cincy nearly as much as the opportunity to see the Jimi Hendrix Experience in concert. We attached no particular significance to the event, other than we were young dudes on a mission with a unique opportunity to see what the Hendrix Experience was all about. We were young high school students, and we were all about Jimi. We had all purchased the 8-track tape of the album, Are You Experienced? And we had already driven countless miles around our hometown in southern Ohio, accompanied by the unearthly sounds of Purple Haze and Foxy Lady and Hey Joe. We had already been exposed to the footage of Monterey Pop and Jimi's famous guitar-burning ritual. And naturally, we all had marveled at Jimi's guitar theatrics and amazing showmanship. But this, our first true road trip together, was special because it represented a rite of passage in the sense that we were 17 years old, carefree, and entrusted to the wild spirit of rock and roll. I remember we first stopped at a home in Cincinnati, a residence of a relative of one of our concert group. We had a good visit and headed to the gardens. We parked and headed inside amid the large crowd. Like giddy children at an amusement park, we inhaled the sights and sounds of a major rock concert venue. We were too busy living the moment to buy souvenirs, or to realize that we should savor and preserve the Hendrix experience. I'm pretty sure no one took a photo or bought a program. The show was outstanding, loud, heavy, and full of memorable Hendrix moments. Not one of us took drugs or acted crazy or charged the stage. We were there to see Jimi and to hear the experience, period. To us, Jimi was everything groovy and the legitimate sound of our times. Our attendance at the concert validated our cool. We became experienced. The concert ended, and we drove back to our small hometown with some new memories rattling around our juvenile heads. Of course, once back home, our 8-track tapes became our personal soundtrack as we slid them into the players and recounted our concert experience with all our friends who didn't attend. According to published accounts, the concert was the last time that Jimi Hendrix performed in Cincinnati. I will always cherish my Cincinnati Gardens concert memories of 1968. I still listen to Jimi Hendrix and thrill to his great, innovative soul. I think I understand what this alien with a guitar was doing. He was paving the way for so many other rock guitarists to experiment and push the boundaries of their music. I was just a young man when I saw Hendrix. I guess I'm eternally green and boyish in the memory. Also, on the 15th, the Jimi Hendrix Experience is featured in the publication Hit Week, where All Along the Watchtower was number 9 on the top 20 singles chart in England and number 16 in the Dutch singles chart. Saturday the 16th of November, and the Jimi Hendrix Experience reaches number 1 on the US album charts with Electric Ladyland. Later that evening, and the Experience performs at the Boston Garden, Boston, Massachusetts, with support acts, the McCoys and Cat Mother. Diary entries note, Hendrix seriously damaged his amp when he slammed his guitar through the mesh fabric covering the speaker cones. Setlist for the evening, I Don't Live Today, Hey Joe, Fire, Spanish Castle Magic, Voodoo Child's Light Return, Red House, Foxy Lady, Purple Haze, and Star Spangled Banner. After the show, Jimi and Mitch are interviewed for the New England scene. While in the press, the Jimi Hendrix Experience is featured in the following publications. Record Mirror, November 16th edition, where Electric Ladyland sits at number 23 and Smash Hits at number 27 on the top LP charts, while Electric Ladyland sits at number 1 on the top R&B albums chart. Melody Maker, November 16th edition, with All Along the Watchtower sitting at number 8 on the top 30 singles chart and Electric Ladyland positioned at number 8 on the top 20 albums charts. Disc and Music Echo, November 16th edition, with All Along the Watchtower at number 8 on the top 30 single charts and Electric Ladyland at number 8 on the top 20 LPs chart. New Musical Express, November 16th edition, All Along the Watchtower number 9 on the top 30 singles chart, and Electric Ladyland number 4 on the top 15 LPs chart. Top Pops, November 16th to 23 edition, with All Along the Watchtower number 7 on the top 30 singles chart, and Electric Ladyland at number 1 on the top 10 albums chart. Sunday the 17th of November, and the group performs at Woolsey Hall, Yale University, New Haven, Connecticut, for 2 shows, with support acts Cat Mother and Terry Reid. Setlist for the 3 p.m. show, Fire, Foxy Lady, Hey Joe, Red House, Purple Haze, Wild Thing, and Star Spangled Banner. And for the 7 p.m. show, Sgt. Pepper's, Fire, Red House, Foxy Lady, Hey Joe, Voodoo Child's Light Return, Sunshine of Your Love, Purple Haze, Star Spangled Banner, and Wild Thing. Monday the 18th of November, Steve Paul's club, The Scene, is listed for sale in Rolling Stone magazine. The asking price, $100,000. It's one of Jimi's favorite places in New York, almost his home away from home. Meanwhile, at the club, Jimi participates in jam sessions with Peter Solly, keyboards, Terry Reid, vocals, guitar, and Keith Webb on drums. Also on the 20th, the single Crosstown Traffic, with B-side Gypsy Eyes, was released in America by Reprise Records. Then, November 20th, a Noel Redding jams with various musicians, including Jack Cassidy at The Scene. Around this period, the Jimi Hendrix Experience is featured in the following newspapers and music publications. Express Times, San Francisco, November 20th edition. New York High School Free Press, November 20th edition. Helix, November 21st edition, and The Village Voice, November 21st edition. Friday, the 22nd of November, sees the group performing at the Jacksonville Coliseum, Jacksonville, Florida, with support act Cat Mother, concert set list, Fire, Voodoo Child, Slight Return, I Don't Live Today, Sunshine of Your Love, Red House, and Purple Haze. During the concert, Jimmy asked people to stop taking flash photos of him, as it messed with his concentration, but people kept doing it, so he gave the crowd the finger and walked off the stage, refusing to continue. Also around this period, the Experience is featured in the following publications. Hit Week, November 22nd edition, where All Along the Watchtower is number 8 in England and number 12 in the Netherlands in the respective countries' singles charts, and Electric Ladyland sits at number 2 on the top 20 albums. Kaleidoscope Chicago, November 22nd to December 5th edition, and the East Village. Other November 22nd edition. Saturday, the 23rd of November, sees the Experience performing at the Curtis HIXON Hall, Tampa, Florida, supported by Cat Mother. The following article, titled Jimi Hendrix, A Compressed Soul on Guitar by Suzanne Harris, appeared in the St. Petersburg Times, November 24th. Jimi Hendrix fiddled with the strings of his white guitar, with the intrigued air of a child examining a shiny new toy. I'm fascinated by it, he smiles. I dig it. His interest in the guitar was surprisingly naive for a guy who's been on the road with his current band for 2 years straight, playing frenetic electronic sound that connects people like no one else can. You all called it electronic, he said. I don't know anything about it. We have amplifiers and I know how to turn a knob up and down, he said, turning a knob on the guitar. That's all. Moments before Hendrix took the stage at Curtis HIXON last night, some 7,000 pairs of feet began stomping in anticipation. When he entered, a shrill whistle rose from the crowd. He has black, fuzzy hair that sprouts from his head. He wore a floral shirt, a black vest, pearls, and a red scarf tied around one leg of his white bell-bottom pants. How are you? He said softly into the microphone. I would like to dedicate this show to 4 Costa Rican girls. They had already gone backstage to talk to Hendrix before the show. At the start of the show, ushers lined up in front of the stage to prevent panicked people from joining the show. Hendrix plays with 2 musicians he found in London, Noel Redding on guitar and Mitch Mitchell on drums. Together they created a sound with no beginning, no end, just in the middle. When he played, the roof collapsed, the walls shook, and the floor vibrated. When it was all over, you wondered what had happened. Hendrix pressed his soul through the guitar and into the audience, sometimes letting it emerge as wicked blues, other times making it scream from every corner of the room. When the blues were soft and gentle, the audience rested in his hand. When the sound was frantic and angry, it was at the end of a shotgun, but Jimi Hendrix thought the audience was far behind him last night. Those buzzes and moans, those screams and howls can really be tamed. And Jimi Hendrix does it. The following piece, titled The Experience Offers a Bad Trip, by Kay Donahue, appeared in the Evening Independent, November 25th. Jimi Hendrix stopped singing in the middle of a phrase in Purple Haze, turned his back on the audience, and finished the song as an instrumental. Bass player Noel Redding got on the microphone and introduced some of the song's lyrics in a futile attempt to lessen the impact of Hendrix's obvious anger. Purple Haze was finally finished. Hendrix turned to the audience, slowly put down his guitar, replaced the usual peace sign with a gesture of his middle finger, and left the stage. Although he played for almost an hour, his action was not the normal climax of a concert. The audience sat in stunned silence. Then there was a mixture of applause and screams. What motivated Hendrix's unorthodox behavior? He told the police officer who escorted him to the car that the crowd was bad and he just didn't want to react. During the performance, he complained about the number of people taking photos, saying, "It's a shame you spent all that money on a photo. I thought you were coming for sound." Whatever the cause, Hendrix's behavior was inexcusable. For the second time in 4 months, he packed out Curtis HIXON. His first concert was a sellout with several thousand turned away, and Saturday's concert was a near sellout. And for the second time, he failed to explain to the audience what they had come to see. The magic and excitement of Hendrix so evident during his spring appearance at the Miami Pop Festival. The Jimi Hendrix Experience has been on the road for more than 2 years, and the members are tired. That was the problem at the last concert. Hendrix's evident good humor in pre-performance interviews promised a better performance than August's. The introduction of fire as the first part of the show indicated a good show to come. The driving enthusiasm that kept Miami listeners on their feet throughout his performance last spring was maintained. As electric bulbs lit the house with a psychedelic effect and the audience sat listening to his sound, Hendrix became angry. As his anger increased, the quality of his performance declined. By the end of the series, he was a stranger to the crowd, an experience they didn't particularly dig. Hendrix can put on a good show, an exciting experience in musical experimentation. For some reason, none of his performances on the Sun Coast came close to the quality of his Miami concert. Perhaps Hendrix should have decided that 2 years on the road was long enough and rested for the sake of his audience. Sunday the 24th of November, and the Jimi Hendrix Experience performs at the Miami Beach Convention Hall, Miami Beach, Florida, with support act, Cat Mother. The concert set list comprised Sgt. Pepper's, Fire, Hey Joe, I Don't Live Today, Voodoo Child's Light Return, Red House, The Sunshine of Your Love, Spanish Castle Magic, Foxy Lady, Star Spangled Banner, and Purple Haze. The group then flew to New York, where they duly headed to the Café A Go-Go in the Village, where they will celebrate Jimmy's 26th birthday together. And, after being refused stay at the Hilton Hotel in Rockefeller Center, arrangements are made for the group to return to the Penn Garden Hotel, near Madison Square Garden in the Midtown district of Manhattan. Also, on the 23rd of November, the Jimi Hendrix Experience is featured in the following publications: Disc and Music Echo, where All Along the Watchtower sat at number 6 on the top 30 singles chart, and Electric Ladyland number 5 on the top 20 LPs chart. Disc and Music Echo, where All Along the Watchtower sat at number 6 on the top 30 singles chart, while Electric Ladyland featured at number 5 on the top 20 LPs chart. New Musical Express, where All Along the Watchtower was at number 6 on the top 30 singles chart, and Electric Ladyland, number 2 on the top 15 LPs charts. Record Mirror, where Electric Ladyland featured at number 10 on the top LPs chart, and number 1 on the top R&B albums chart. Melody Maker, where All Along the Watchtower stood at number 6 on the top 30 singles chart, and Electric Ladyland at number 5 on the top 20 albums chart. Later, on November 25th and 26th, the experience is featured in articles appearing in the underground publications: Great Speckled Bird, The Heights and Go Set. Wednesday the 27th of November sees the band performing at the Rhode Island Auditorium, Providence, Rhode Island. The tickets for this concert were printed for a November 9th performance, the date for which the concert was originally scheduled. Thursday the 28th of November, and the Jimi Hendrix Experience perform at the prestigious electronic Thanksgiving event at the Philharmonic Hall, New York City for 2 shows. After Carnegie Hall refused Hendrix the opportunity to perform, an arrangement was found by promoter Ron Delsener for the Experience to play at the Philharmonic Hall, but on one proviso. Mitch explains. We moved back to New York after the Benedict Canyon period and did a few East Coast gigs, including the Philharmonic Hall in New York. We'd always wanted to play Carnegie Hall, but they wouldn't have us. In lieu of that, we were offered the Philharmonic, which was great. Lovely hall. Very prestigious. No rock band had ever played there. Only one problem: a member of the band had to play in a symphonic context. Jimmy and Noel flatly refused, so I thought, okay, what the hell, I'll do it. Would I mind having tea with Leonard Bernstein? Which I did. Charming chap. He suggested that I might like to play percussion with the New York Brass Ensemble. It was fine. I went on with them, with a collar and tie on, and did some Bach and a little Mozart, after which the Experience played. It was a great gig and the whole thing was filmed. According to Noel, the plush velvet comfort of the Philharmonic was a dream come true. The red, deep pile carpeted dressing rooms, with a grand piano as polished as our personal uniformed waiter, was built to accommodate an orchestra. Why was I in a rock band? The acoustics were impeccable. The subtlest nuance carried distortion-free to the furthest corners. We'd been bashing it out in the fields and barn-like sports halls to miles of people who couldn't hear us well enough to bother listening. It was sobering to follow the New York Brass Quintet and harpsichordist Fernando Valenti, and difficult to adjust to the thought that every vibration of every note would be heard. While Hendrix author John McDermott noted, although the performance was not professionally recorded, Hendrix was keen to take advantage of the Philharmonic's famed acoustics. Hanley sound, The outfit that would later go on to equip Woodstock was hired in from Boston, bringing huge loudspeakers, normally used in movie theaters, that were 4 times the size of the Experience's PA. In between shows at the Philharmonic Hall that evening, Jimmy's birthday was celebrated, involving lots of cakes and gifts, and no doubt the mood and setting resulted in a great concert for the Philharmonic Hall audience members, with practically no technical problems and magnificent versions of the songs performed. In addition to the backstage celebrations, ABC television films an interview with RHODE managers Jerry Stickles and Eric Barrett. Concert set list for the first electronic Thanksgiving show: Fire, I Don't Live Today, Getting My Heart Back Together Again, Spanish Castle Magic, Foxy Lady, Red House, The Sunshine of Your Love, and Purple Haze. And partial set list of the second show: Are You Experienced? Spanish Castle Magic, Tax-Free, Possible, All Along the Watchtower, Red House, I Don't Live Today, and Voodoo Child Slight Return. After the show, at the Philharmonic Hall, the band and its entourage traveled to the Café A Go-Go in Greenwich Village, where the 5th annual Thanksgiving Blues Bag is being held. There, Jimmy is offered birthday cake number 3, a square cake this time. When Jimmy blows out the candles on the cake, photographer Dagmat Crunch is there to immortalize this intimate moment. Photographer Jay Good is also present in the nightclub and photographs Jimmy holding the hand of an unknown blonde. The following is a description of the evening by an unnamed author. I don't think the builders and planners of Philharmonic Hall, in their wildest flights of imagination, ever thought that someday that conservative stage would be filled with giant speakers powered by amplifiers, turned up full volume, pouring out ecstasy to a capacity crowd. But it came to pass, not once but twice, on Thanksgiving, as the Jimi Hendrix Experience denied the use of Carnegie Hall, let loose with their usual mind assault. Perhaps to atone for the desecration of this shrine, the first half of the show was given to Fernando Valenti, a highly regarded classical pianist, and the New York Brass Quintet, a straight chamber ensemble. Experienced drummer Mitch Mitchell joined the quintet for their last number, and if the match did not quite create a new art form, it was an interesting, cute segment. With an apologetic, we haven't practiced for a while, so we're just going to jam a little and see what happens. Hendrix led his crew, which includes Mitchell and Noel Redding, through their paces. The Experience somehow always manages to stay on the tasteful side of excessive loudness, and if the lack of practice showed up occasionally, it was compensated for by many moments of sheer beauty. Tunes were mostly staples from the Hendrix repertoire: Fire, I Don't Live Today, Crosstown Traffic, group's current single, Foxy Lady, and Purple Haze, but their instrumental interpretation of Sunshine of Your Love, done as a tribute to Cream, was one of those pleasant surprises that just made going worthwhile. While this piece by Robert Shelton appeared in the New York Times, 2 Baroque and roll concerts at Philharmonic Hall got off to a rocky start, but ended triumphantly, if not for the mating of classics and pop, at least for the star, Jimi Hendrix. The trend toward mixing classics and rock has been gathering force in recent months. It is primarily a recording industry concept for selling more records to the youth market, but is also an idea that has captured the imagination of composers, concert producers and fans who see no need for categories in musical experience. It all begins to make sense if we view the superstar, Mr. Hendrix, as a great classical virtuoso. He breaks strings, as did Paganini. He postures, as did Liszt. He deals in thundering climaxes, as did Beethoven. He explores the range of colors and effects of his guitar-turned-orchestra, as did Stravinsky with other instruments. The parallel has its obvious limits. Mr. Hendrix is, beyond being an impeccable musician-singer, a one-man revolutionary lover and showman. He makes the tradition of the blues as modern as tomorrow, astounding the teeny boppers with his arrogance, while soothing them with warmth and eroticism. The show was originally planned for Carnegie Hall, but found no welcome there. The young audience was a bit surly and rough, but didn't really cause much trouble. And Mr. Hendrix, in the first show at least, happily found he could cause excitement enough without smashing his loudspeakers, as he often does. The evening began poorly. The great Baroque harpsichordist, Mr. Valenti, was forced to endure an audience as mannerless as young savages. They buzzed and whistled through his Scarlatti and cheered his brilliant playing in mock appreciation. The host and scene maker, Steve Paul, admonished them against acting with the sensitivity of the Chicago police. This seemed to turn the trick, for the kids then listened appreciatively to the brass quintet. But the audience responded best when the drummer, Mr. Mitchell, joined them for some informal jamming. It is going to be some time before rock audiences, or to be specific, before some rock audiences can begin to appreciate all the musical feast spread before them. But that day is not far off. Mr. Valenti's gracious patience will earn his reward. And from The Village Voice by Annie Fisher. Calling it a feast hardly does justice to all the music going down around town last week. Give thanks for Thanksgiving and all the students it brings to town to support the likes of Jimi Hendrix, the Jefferson Airplane, Slim Harpo, the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, the Incredible String Band, etc., etc. In 1 week, the late afternoon of the 28th of November, I spent on the noisy stage of a deserted Philharmonic hall, littered with never-again speakers that Jimi Hendrix had rammed through somewhere else the night before. I don't know if ABC TV used the interview they typed with road manager Jerry Stickles and an ebullient equipment man named Eric Barrett. Returning a couple of hours later by the front entrance, I found the house packed and the stage deserted. I was late, but Hendrix was later. If any fault was to be found in the show, it was that it seemed disappointingly truncated. I don't think Hendrix could possibly not play well, but this fourth time I've seen him in concert reminded me again that if you can possibly catch him jamming, not difficult if you stay up late and can make the scene when he's in town, you're going to hear Hendrix at his very best. He is a born entertainer, as well as musician, very much at home on stage, but as the innovator he is at his best, exploring, experimenting, or even just noodling around in the freedom and challenge a jam session provides. Eric Barrett interview by Annie Fisher. Do you think the generation gap applies to Hendrix's music? Eric. After the Hendrix concert in Philadelphia, March 31st, an older lady who had just come from the concert gushed to me, "Isn't it wonderful? All those young people coming out to hear Harry Belafonte." Belafonte was scheduled to appear the week after. Subterranean News ran the following piece by Vince Aletti. Jimi Hendrix was late for the first show, and it was taken as a bad omen. During the ever-lengthening intermission, another bad sign began to take shape: the audience. The teeny bopper contingent was out in force, holding down the front rows, or later, taking frantic headlong runs from the back to crouch religiously in the front aisles. In the lobby, someone offered a joint to a boy who looked like he might soon be 15. "I don't need it," he said, already somewhere else. "I'm tripping." Another one of those audiences. A sort of dread began to set in. But as usual, omens proved a waste of time, and when Hendrix finally came out on stage, he easily dispelled them. He broke exuberantly into fire, sending warm waves of excitement through the audience. This was not entirely reassuring, since what had bothered me about previous Hendrix concerts was his decision to stick with the crowd-pleasing over first album material. And as soon as the first song ended, people began to scream requests for Foxy Lady and Purple Haze. But Hendrix told them to relax, that he was going to jam and would get to everything in time. It was the first time I had seen Hendrix take command of the audience, rather than let them command him, and after that, everything got better. At one point, a girl called Hendrix to the edge of the stage, handing him a string of beads. He took it and put it on top of one of the amplifiers, still torn in a gaping hole from the last guitar attack, a scene mercifully left out of this act. When the girl persisted in calling Hendrix over again, he laughed, telling her, back at his mic, "Watch out, baby, I'm a booger man, watch out." Dig it. I think maybe I've been underestimating Hendrix all this time. And finally, Billboard ran the following review titled, "Hendrix Knocks the Stuffings Out of Hall." Philharmonic Hall underwent a Jimi Hendrix Experience and a unique electronic Thanksgiving Thursday, 28, surviving the two-show assault with its classical aplomb, ruffled like the feathers of the holiday turkey. Appropriately plumed for the occasion, Jimi Hendrix punished two guitars till they cried out in great gulps of psychedelic agony, and flashed his classical-type virtuosity for a savage bunch of teeny boppers. Hendrix jammed with bassist Noel Redding and drummer Mitch Mitchell, coloring his athletic guitar man with sexy twists, hip quips and struttings, and the lack of inhibition of a one-man revolution erupting on stage. Taking in his gait and dress, it becomes apparent that the instrument Hendrix plays best of all is Hendrix himself, a circus with all three rings in rhythm. Hendrix's impossible licks and riffs coaxed out of his guitar without mercy, screamed through Philharmonic in waves and bursts. His were frantic translations of blues, lyrically delayed, but soaring in their mind-bending psychedelic effect. His high-frequency guitar work, fed to the audience through giant amplifiers torn open from previous Hendrix destructive fits, flitted through a range of decibel and vocal imitations as Hendrix threw himself bodily into the beat. Arrogant as a barroom bully and erotic to the point of outright invitation, Hendrix wailed from his knees while changing strings and by raking the strings across the microphone and his mouth. Following a rude reception to virtuoso harpsichordist Fernando Valenti and the New York Brass Quintet, Hendrix stomped on stage to the war whoops of excited fans. And though the Hendrix Experience is the most ecstatic musical experience in rock today, PHILHARMONIC should have been spared the scene of the rock trip and left in darkness to enjoy a quiet Thanksgiving. Friday, the 29th of November. Noel Redding is interviewed by Donna Lawson for I Magazine, published in the January 1969 issue. Mitch Mitchell and jazz flautist Jeremy Steig jammed with Jefferson Airplane during their performance at the Fillmore East in New York. The Jefferson Airplane were booked to perform from November 28th to 30, with Buddy Guy and Chuck Davis Dance Company also on the Fillmore program. Also on the same day, the Jimi Hendrix Experience is featured in the following publications: The New York Times, November 29th edition, and Los Angeles Free Press, November 29th to December 5th edition. Saturday, the 30th of November, sees the Jimi Hendrix Experience perform before an audience of 10,000 at the COBO Arena, Detroit, Michigan, with support act Cat Mother, concert set list for the evening, Fire, Spanish Castle Magic, I Don't Live Today, Sunshine of Your Love, Voodoo Child Slight Return, Red House, Foxy Lady, Hey Joe, and Purple Haze. According to Noel, Jimmy nearly missed the November 30th gig in Detroit. Trixie Sullivan, the office secretary, knew that each of us might refuse to play a gig for one reason or another, but Mitch and I could be persuaded to get back on board when it was pointed out that no play equals no pay. But a couple of times Jimmy refused point blank to play. We weren't particularly worried when Jimmy missed the plane, but when people from the record company were waiting for us at the airport and took us to a hotel, we knew something serious was going on. Jeffrey was on the phone. Jimmy had freaked and refused to play. No details. Jimmy and Jeffrey had a strange relationship. Jimmy was always going on about getting rid of Jeffrey, but he never got anywhere and Jeffrey managed to retain control. In any case, Jeffrey managed to change Jimmy's mind and a Lear jet was hired to get him to the gig. We don't know what Jeffrey said to him to decide, but a musician at heart, it's certainly not more money that would have made the difference. I would rather imagine something like, thousands of kids are waiting to see you play, or something to that effect. Whatever it was, it worked, and finally Jimmy arrived by private jet just before going on stage. The Detroit show was the penultimate of some 144 concerts given by the Experience in the first 11 months of 1968. After the Chicago show the next day, we would not see the group on stage again until early 1969. As November draws to a close, we find the Experience being featured in the following publications. Record Mirror, November 30th edition, where Electric Ladyland is charting at number 8 on Top LP's chart and number 1 on the Top R&B albums chart. Melody Maker, November 30th edition, where All Along the Watchtower sits at number 6 in the Top 30 single charts, and Electric Ladyland at number 4 in the Top 20 album charts. And finally Superlove, the November 1968 edition. That concludes this installment of the Jimi Hendrix story. Stay tuned for the next episode, where we will begin the deep dive into December 1968 of the Hendrix story, including the final gig of the second US tour at the Chicago Coliseum, Fat Mattress, Jimmy being fingerprinted at the 22nd Police Precinct, and the various jams and club performances. As promised, we hope you enjoy the following bonus images. As we approach the end of 1968 in Jimmy's story, we thought it would be fitting to revisit some of the photographic highlights, and be sure to check the new and extensive catalogue of Hendrix books, classic Hendrix recordings on vinyl, t-shirts and audio equipment for the best musical experience, all available for purchase from the Belly Button Window Shop. Here's a preview. Don't forget to subscribe for future content updates. And by the way, if you have any stories or anecdotes to contribute, we would love to hear from you. Until next time.